Origins and ancestry: the Cherokee are an indigenous people of North America belonging to the Iroquoian linguistic family. The origin of the name Cherokee remains a subject of debate among historians and linguists. Some theories suggest it may have been derived from a term used by the Choctaw people or from one of the Iroquois Five Nations. Another widely accepted explanation is that it originates from a Creek word meaning people of a different speech. However, the name the Cherokee traditionally use for themselves is Onyenwe, meaning principal people. The Cherokee language, part of the Iroquoian language family, was given a unique written form in the 19th century, thanks to the remarkable efforts of Sequoyah, a visionary Cherokee leader who developed the Cherokee syllabary. Anthropologists and historians propose two main theories regarding the origins of the Cherokee. One suggests that they were relatively late migrants to the southern Appalachian region, possibly arriving in prehistoric times from the Great Lakes area, which was historically home to the Iroquois and other Iroquoian-speaking peoples. Another theory indicates that they may have originated from present-day Texas or northern Mexico before moving northward to the Great Lakes, only to later migrate south again to the Appalachian Mountains and its surrounding valleys. James Mooney, an ethnographer who lived among the Cherokee in the late 19th century, recorded oral traditions that supported the idea of an ancient migration from the Great Lakes region. By approximately 1500 BCE, the Cherokee had developed a distinct linguistic identity. By the year 1000 CE, they had established a woodland culture heavily influenced by the Mississippian tradition, characterized by permanent settlements, ceremonial centers, and mound building. Society and culture like other southeastern tribes, the Cherokee economy was primarily agrarian. They cultivated staple crops such as corn, beans, squash, sunflowers, and tobacco. Hunting was also an essential part of their sustenance, with deer, bear, and elk being taken down using bows and arrows, while smaller game like raccoons, rabbits, squirrels, and turkeys were hunted using long blowguns crafted from river cane. Fishing methods included hooks and lines, spears, and traps. In addition to cultivated crops, the Cherokee gathered wild plant foods such as roots, greens, berries, and nuts. Cherokee clothing varied by season. They primarily wore woven cloth or deerskin, with women donning dresses, men wearing pants, and all individuals using footwear. During colder months, they draped themselves in cloaks made of woven cloth or fur. Hairstyles differed across clans. Some men shaved their heads, while others maintained top knots, ponytails, or beards. At the time of European contact, the Cherokee were a well-established agricultural society, residing in approximately 200 sizable villages and towns. A typical Cherokee town consisted of 30 to 60 houses surrounding a large council house, where communal gatherings were held and a sacred fire was maintained. Their traditional dwellings were wattle and daub structures, built with interwoven branches coated in mud, often partially sunken into the ground for insulation. In later years, they transitioned to log cabins with bark roofs, featuring a single door and a smoke hole for ventilation. Among their most significant religious observances was the green corn ceremony, a ritual of renewal and thanksgiving. This festival was marked by a purification process, ceremonial dancing, and the rekindling of the sacred fire. The Cherokee followed a matrilineal system, where lineage and inheritance were traced through the mother's family. Traditionally, Cherokee society was divided into 7 matrilineal clans, with families residing in permanent villages typically located along rivers and streams. Women held significant authority, owning homes and farmland, and playing central roles in governance. In many Cherokee communities, women were honored as life givers and caretakers, both through childbirth and agriculture. The Cherokee historically alternated between periods of war and peace, which shaped their dual system of governance. Each town had 2 primary leaders, a white chief who governed during times of peace, and a red chief who led in times of war. An assembly of influential women participated in war councils, advising male leaders and overseeing the treatment of captives. Slavery existed within Cherokee society before European colonization, with captured warriors from enemy tribes either enslaved temporarily or adopted into the community. During the colonial era, English settlers in the Carolinas began purchasing Cherokee as slaves in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. The Cherokee themselves also participated in the native slave trade, selling captives to European traders. Over time, as they adopted certain European customs, some Cherokee acquired African slaves to work on farms and plantations. Even during their forced removal along the Trail of Tears, the Cherokee brought enslaved people with them and continued the practice in Indian Territory. European contact and early trade. The first recorded European contact with the Cherokee likely occurred in 1540 when Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto and his expedition traveled through the southeastern United States. Although de Soto's interactions with the Cherokee were brief, his expedition was marked by hostility toward other indigenous groups. In 1566, another Spanish explorer, Juan Pardo, revisited the region and established a short-lived fort and mining operation. However, the Cherokee's relative isolation in the Appalachian interior meant that significant European influence did not occur until after the English established the Virginia colony in 1609. By 1629, English traders had begun venturing westward into the Appalachian Mountains, initiating contact with the Cherokee. By the late 17th century, the Cherokee population was estimated to be between 20,000 and 50,000. In 1673, English traders reached Echota, the capital of the Cherokee Nation, to establish trade relations. This marked the beginning of an evolving relationship between the Cherokee and European settlers, which would profoundly shape the tribe's future. European trade and its impact on Cherokee society. The introduction of European goods brought profound changes to Cherokee society. Items such as brass kettles, textiles, scissors, knives, firearms, ammunition, metal hatchets, hoes, and trinkets were exchanged for valuable native commodities, including deerskins, beeswax, river cane baskets, and even native captives who were traded as slaves. As a result of this burgeoning trade, the Cherokee social structure began to shift. The role of the medicine man diminished, while warriors, once esteemed for their role in tribal defense, became hunters driven by the demands of the fur trade. Cherokee interactions with neighboring tribes and European settlers were often fraught with conflict. In 1673, they launched raids on Spanish settlements in Florida and clashed with coastal tribes in the Carolinas. However, European influence further intensified intertribal rivalries, destabilizing the region and fueling competition over trade alliances. By 1680, most southeastern tribes, including the Cherokee, had acquired firearms, which dramatically altered the nature of warfare. The Cherokee fortified their larger villages as conflicts escalated. To the east, they engaged in frequent skirmishes with the Catawba. To the south, tensions grew with the Creek and Choctaw. To the west, long-standing animosity persisted with the Chickasaw. Like the Cherokee, were allied with the British. Meanwhile, to the north, the struggle among European powers over the fur trade ignited the Beaver Wars, pitting the French, Dutch, and English against one another, with native tribes drawn into the conflict. In 1730, seeking a strategic alliance, the Cherokee pledged loyalty to King George II of Britain, promising to trade exclusively with the English. At the time, European nations were actively forming alliances with native tribes, and the English sought to counter the growing influence of the French in the region. However, the Cherokee paid a heavy price for these foreign entanglements. During the 18th century, a series of smallpox epidemics, introduced by European contact, devastated their population, reducing their numbers by nearly half. Despite these challenges, by the mid-1700s, Cherokee territory was firmly established in the Appalachian region, covering present-day North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, and Georgia. However, between 1721 and 1777, the Cherokee were compelled to cede vast portions of their land through a series of 10 treaties with the British, significantly reducing their territorial holdings. The Cherokee in the early United States following American independence, relations with Native American tribes became a central concern for U.S. national security. Two of the most influential figures in shaping early U.S. Indian policy were Henry Knox, the first Secretary of War, and President George Washington. Washington believed that assimilation, often termed civilization, was the best path to peaceful coexistence. This vision involved transforming Native Americans into agrarian farmers, abandoning traditional hunting practices and migratory lifestyles, and adopting European-style clothing, language, and religious customs. To facilitate this process, Christian missionaries were dispatched to Cherokee lands, where they taught reading, writing, arithmetic, household management, personal grooming, and table etiquette, while discouraging traditional spiritual practices. However, the Cherokee were selective in their adoption of European customs. They embraced aspects that strengthened their society while rejecting elements that conflicted with their cultural identity. Despite their efforts to coexist, it soon became clear that American settlers, like the British before them, were relentless in their pursuit of native lands. This created deep divisions within Cherokee leadership. Some advocated negotiation and assimilation, believing it the best way to protect Cherokee sovereignty, while others resisted diplomacy, arguing that any accommodation would lead to further territorial loss. During this turbulent period, a Cherokee man named Sequoyah took remarkable steps to preserve his people's language and cultural identity. Over the course of 12 years, he developed the Cherokee syllabary, a writing system that allowed the Cherokee to achieve mass literacy at an unprecedented rate. This enabled different Cherokee communities, even those scattered by displacement, to maintain communication. By the early 1800s, continuous encroachment on Cherokee land forced many to relocate to reserved, temporarily undisputed territories further west. By the late 18th century, the Cherokee east of the Mississippi had established a centralized government, moving beyond the clan-based leadership system of earlier times. In 1817, approximately one-third of the Cherokee population voluntarily relocated west to the Mississippi River in exchange for land in present-day Arkansas, as part of a treaty with the U.S. government. The road to forced removal in 1828, Sequoyah traveled to Washington, D.C., with a delegation of Western Cherokee, signing a treaty that exchanged their Arkansas land for land in present-day Oklahoma, an area designated as Indian Territory. These early migrants, known as the Old Settlers, were the first to establish Cherokee communities in the West. To further demonstrate their ability to assimilate, the Cherokee established a modernized capital, New Echota, adopted a constitution, and launched the first Native American newspaper, the Cherokee Phoenix. However, none of these measures alleviated the increasing pressure for their removal. The discovery of gold in Cherokee territory in 1828 further intensified tensions. In May 1830, President Andrew Jackson convinced Congress to pass the Indian Removal Act, which mandated the relocation of all Native American tribes east of the Mississippi to lands in the West. For the 5 civilized tribes, the Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole, signed removal treaties in 1832, but the Cherokee refused. Instead, they pursued legal action, taking their case to the U.S. Supreme Court in Cherokee Nation versus Georgia. Chief John Ross, with the support of several American lawyers, fought vigorously to defend Cherokee sovereignty. Despite the legal battle, white settlers illegally occupied Cherokee land. In 1834, the state of Georgia auctioned off large portions of Cherokee land through a land lottery. Although Chief John Ross opposed any surrender of territory, a small faction within the tribe, later known as the Treaty Party, negotiated directly with the U.S. government. This group, without the approval of the Cherokee Nation, signed the Treaty of New Echota in 1835, ceding all remaining Cherokee land in the southeast for $5 million, along with provisions for relocation and a year of federal support. The U.S. Senate ratified the treaty, and President Jackson swiftly signed it into law, giving the Cherokee until May 1838 to leave their homeland voluntarily. The Trail of Tears when the deadline arrived. Nearly 16,000 Cherokee remained on their ancestral lands, unwilling to leave. In June 1838, U.S. soldiers forcibly rounded them up and marched them westward. Some Cherokee hid in the Appalachian Mountains to evade removal, but most were detained in stockades before being transported under brutal conditions. Many were loaded onto flatboats at Ross's Landing in Tennessee and sent downriver, crammed so tightly that some boats nearly capsized. Others were forced onto trains, while thousands undertook the journey on foot, enduring exposure, disease, and starvation along the way. This tragic forced migration became known as the Trail of Tears, during which an estimated 4,000 Cherokee perished due to the harsh conditions. Those who survived arrived in Indian Territory, where they faced the daunting challenge of rebuilding their nation under unfamiliar and often hostile circumstances. The aftermath of removal and internal struggles, the forced relocation of the Cherokee, known as the Trail of Tears, resulted in the deaths of over 4,000 people before they reached Indian Territory, present-day Oklahoma. Once there, the challenges for the Cherokee did not end. Chief John Ross and his supporters in the National Party faced the monumental task of unifying a divided people. The old settlers, who had voluntarily moved west before the Trail of Tears, governed themselves under a system based on traditional Cherokee laws, while the Eastern Cherokees, who arrived later, had a constitution modeled after that of the United States. The stark differences between these two governing structures led to deep divisions within the nation. In an attempt to mediate, Sequoyah, an old settler, and Jesse Bushyhead, an Eastern Cherokee Baptist minister, proposed that the Cherokee people themselves decide on their future governance. A meeting was scheduled for July 1839, where both factions would determine the political structure of the reunited Cherokee nation. However, before this gathering could take place, a faction within the National Party sought retribution against those they held responsible for the Treaty of New Echota, which had led to Cherokee removal. A secret list was drawn up, marking individuals they deemed guilty of betrayal. 3 prominent Treaty Party members were assassinated in coordinated attacks. Major Ridge was ambushed and killed on a road in Washington County, Arkansas. Elias Boudinot was lured outside by a group of men feigning illness and was murdered. John Ridge was dragged from his home and brutally stabbed to death. In July 1839, despite the ongoing turmoil, Chief John Ross, the National Party, and select representatives of the old settlers signed an act of union, formally merging the two Cherokee factions. By September, a new constitution, mirroring the Eastern Cherokee model, was ratified, with John Ross elected as principal chief and an old settler as second principal chief. The following years were marked by internal conflicts, sometimes escalating into outright civil war, as the National Party, the old settlers, and the Treaty Party struggled to coexist in their new western homeland. Efforts to restore peace were led by Sequoyah and John Ross, culminating in a treaty brokered by the United States government on August 6, 1846. This Treaty of 1846 ensured that all Cherokee people, regardless of faction, would have equal rights to their lands in Indian Territory. It also granted amnesty for all political crimes committed during the period of internal strife. The Cherokee during the American Civil War. During the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, the Cherokee Nation faced another divisive struggle. After much internal conflict, the majority of the tribe ultimately aligned with the Confederacy, though some Cherokee factions remained loyal to the Union. Cherokee warriors in western North Carolina became part of Thomas's Legion, an elite military unit composed of both Cherokee and white soldiers. Their exceptional combat performance earned them distinction, particularly in Virginia, where they fought in several key battles. Thomas's Legion was the last Confederate unit to